If anyone has all the skills to do what you're doing right now, it's you, Kat. Like, with your background in consulting and just your passion in fashion,
Thank you.
you're on the right track. I'm so excited to see everything you're going to do. So, why don't you give our audience a little bit of background into what your career has been so far, what this year has been? You can do high level intro of yourself, and then we can go from there.
Wow. Okay, so thank you for having me, Janelle. This is so exciting and very different for me. But my background, so I grew up with my mom, who's a seamstress, and she just taught me to look at apparel in a very interesting and very pragmatic way. And so that was always in the back of my mind, like looking at clothes, looking at style. I wasn't allowed to have a lot of clothing, I think, because you just grow out of it so quickly as a child. And so it always made me like wonder how can I like play with what I had. And then I grew up in a very like traditional Asian family. I went to business school and then I went into consulting. And in consulting, I spent a lot of time in the retail and the consumer market industry. So playing a little bit homage to the fashion and the style and the very consumer focused industry. And that was really, really fun. I had so much fun working all across North America, advising different companies on different problems and understanding a bit more about operations and like how organizations worked in the back end of things. So really got a better understanding and grasp of what it really took to run an organization and the different functions that have to work together and with one another. And then basically I on the side was always passionate about fashion still. I would draw, I would style my friends, I would just have fun and put together little outfits, take cute photos, influencer stuff if you wanted to call it that. And then one thing really led to another. And actually in 2016, when I was still in my undergrad, it was one summer I didn't get a summer internship. And like that's a big deal in business school. It's like, oh, you have to land a summer and work on something or work for someone. And I didn't land one. And I decided to just try entrepreneurship. It's something I was interested in. I took a few classes at school as well in this space. And at that time, I wanted to make one piece swimsuit because I grew up as a swimmer. And I struggled with that because I was not a textiles engineer. B, the problem I was trying to solve was to make these swimsuits last longer, like competitive swimsuits. Again, no textiles or chemical experience. And so I was like, okay, well, that's not a problem I can solve. I will put that on the back burner. And then I decided to look at my closet. And one of my mentors at that time was like, oh, try to look for something else that you could solve, run some tests, and then go back to your original issue. And I essentially looked in my closet and was like, you know what? It was really hard for me to find a pair of good, comfortable black office pants. And I was in corporate space because, I went to business school. We always had these business meetings. You had to dress nice and you had to be professional and wear business attire. Uncomfortable. And I was like, okay, this would be really fun. If nothing comes from it, I'll just have a few pairs of these black pants. That fit me perfectly. And then I decided to go forth and try that out. And so in Vancouver, it's a small little market, and I started learning a bit more about the industry in fashion and apparel in Vancouver. I started making connections here. And essentially, I got to the point where I had to make big decisions like, okay, I'm going to buy bulks of fabric, and they have minimum orders. This is a big commitment, and I'm going to make this real. And at that point, I got very scared. It was a capital intensive project
And you're
or
21 at this point.
and passion.
20
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah. I had this passion, but I was like, oh, I don't know what I don't know what I'm doing. And so I put that on the back burner, and I was like, okay, like that was really fun. Went back to school, graduated, and then I went into consulting. But because of that foundation that I had built, which I'm very proud of myself for, and applaud my 20-year-old self, I came home this year to visit my family from Toronto, where I was working out of, and I reconnected with the network that I had built. And realistically, one thing led to another, and I started talking to more entrepreneurs, started talking to more people in the industry. I became very serious about this. And the more I worked on my brand and the more I worked on Kayenne, the more it became, I could see the fruits of my labor. I could see the results of just taking one step further and what that could look like. And ultimately, I decided that Kayenne was something I wanted to try and work on fully and create a brand and make good apparel. And I decided to jump and I left consulting at PWC and I use all my consulting skills and experiences and everything that I have learned and apply it to Kayenne.
Thank you for that. That was a perfect high level overview for the audience. I've known Kat since we were 15 and 16. So Kat and I met in Ottawa at a high school conference, right? And we clicked right away. Everyone was pretty similar, type A, overachiever type. So it was hard not to all click. But Kat and I always kept in touch. And from an outsider standpoint, I'll say two things. Kat was killing it in her career. You were jumping positions so quick as soon as you got into PWC. You were a senior consultant at the time you left at
That's right.
PWC. I mean, for anyone in the business world, if you're going to consulting at a university at one of the big four, like the PWC, the KPMGs, like you're doing good. So like I said, from an outsider view, you were looking amazing career wise, always slightly envious. And then from a fashion standpoint, I think I've always said you have the best style. Every single time you would post on Instagram, I'd be like, she has the perfect corporate style that is functional. You look great and it was functional, but it was also very simple. So I am not surprised you are launching a clothing brand like all.
I'm so flattered. Thank you. Those
Of
are such
course.
kind words. And I remember when we met, we both thrived off of each other's energy, and it was so much. It was like some leadership conference.
So, talk to me about your time at PwC and consulting. You left in September of this past year. So, you quit a really safe job during a pandemic. What made you want to go into consulting?
So I decided to go into consulting because it's a place where you really get to learn about a variety of different industries very quickly and leading edge problems, if you will, to problems that large organizations are facing and try to help them and solve these problems and work with high profile organizations and companies. That really excited me because that's a big challenge. And as a fresh undergrad, I wanted that rigor and that challenge and to learn fast, but also fail fast and fail hard, but recover from that. And so consulting was a playing field that possible. And at PwC, yeah, I had so many different experiences in so many different areas. I did work for the most part in the retail and consumer market industry group, but also across like public sector, even not for profit, as well as the technology organization, the media, and natural resources. The learnings in consulting is actually from like other industries though. So like the more I could get exposed to other areas, that's where you can also see like, oh, like this solution or this issue also surfaces up in like a different industry. And then you cross apply that type of learning. I think that's where the beauty comes from. And that's why I wanted to go into consulting because you get that diverse experience, but I knew deep down in my heart, like all the projects and the cases that we worked on in retail, I wanted to work on those. And that's what I wanted to focus on. And what's funny is I appreciate you saying the fact that I have nice style for the office. I remember very clearly there was one time, it was probably like 2 weeks in, maybe 2 months max to the role. And I got called out for what I was wearing.
Please explain.
Oh my goodness, my manager at this time. So I bought these beautiful, like, I bought these pants from like a Vancouver company and they're these wool pants. And I thought they were office appropriate. I found them very comfortable as well. And I found them to be very professional. I obviously would pair it with other corporate
Yeah,
appropriate
like a nice white blouse or
apparel. Yeah, exactly. And so these pants were gray, so they looked maybe a bit more sweatpant-like, and also the material was wool, so a little thicker, so you could kind of imagine it might look like a pair of sweatpants, but it was cut in like a office pants style.
but you're
And
also wearing probably the right shoes to go with it
oh,
and
I am wearing dress shoes, I am wearing a dress shirt, and I'm wearing a blazer. My manager at that time also didn't even directly tell me herself. I was told through a senior. It was communicated that my apparel was not office appropriate. through with my senior at that time. And I was so shocked. I was so upset. I was just so I was obviously offended, but I was just like so upset. I was like, wow, like am I not allowed to wear these pants ever again to the office? I was like, wow, like I spent so much money on these and they're not office appropriate. I can't believe I got called out for that. It to this day, it's still like it's so funny to me. But in the moment, I like was flush red. I was so embarrassed. I was so nervous, and I remember being so upset about it because I took pride, honestly, in my style and my fashion and how I wanted to be respected at the firm
Of
and with the
course.
client. And so I was just so embarrassed at that point. But the day I rolled off of that project, I wore those pants, like, really just
And no one ever said anything.
Mm.
I trust that you look professional. The manager's issue is probably you weren't dressed boring. That's probably what they didn't like.
Yeah, different taste and style for sure. That was it.
Yeah, exactly. My first job at a university, it was very corporate wear, blazers, pants. I just like was so uncomfortable. Like you said at the beginning, when you find the one pair of black pants that fit nice and look well, I'm wearing those Monday to Friday. Don't care. I'm just changing the top. There is a fine line of stylish and trendy and corporate and professional. It's so hard to find.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
hey, Kat, I mean, you seem to have figured it out.
Yeah, that was a funny experience, a good learning experience of how to dress for the office for yeah, my time at PWC and in consulting just taught me a whole bunch of business skills and a variety of different ways to think about business and what that means for an organization. And consulting also has a wrap around being like a really hard job, late nights. But all those days were really fun. And I learned a bit more about work life balance. But yeah, I worked hard. We traveled a lot for the job. It was so much fun. But there were definitely times where it was hard, like the long nights, right? Like you said, but willing to get up every day, be excited, and look at every opportunity in a way that's like, okay, like even if the content wasn't exciting, maybe there's something to learn from. And there are definitely times also like in a corporate setting where you put in a lot of work, but you're not the return in a sense.
Or the
And
recognition.
yeah, exactly. And recognition is definitely you really had to work for what you were wanted and find the opportunities that aligned with your interests, but also you had to work for an organization. So the organization has their agenda and their operations, and you have to find your home and how to fit in there while continuing to find your path and what you wanted. And so for me, I actually struggled with that. And I found it very difficult sometimes to find areas that I wanted to work in and was interested in because the organization was doing something else. And beyond that was like finding the right people to mentor me, to be the managers, to be the seniors and support me and sponsor me as well. And I found in a large organization that can be really tough. And so that in itself is also huge learning. I had to learn how to learn and learn how to work.
Ultimately, though, you left about 4 or 5 months ago. Are there any moments that are at the forefront for you where you remember that moment, you're like, "I'm not here for much longer."
Oh my gosh. Many, many times I think the grass is always greener on the other side. But there were definitely moments where I felt that I had learned what I needed and gotten what I wanted and needed out of consulting. And at that time, being at a place where I felt like it wasn't giving me what I needed or giving it to me fast enough as well. I mean, this is my passion, like fashion and apparel and having my own brand. That's a dream of mine. I've always had, and I always talked about it. And it got to the point where let's not talk about it anymore and let's start making it real. And then when I started making little steps to making it real, one thing led to another. And then the more I put work into it, the more the results came. And I could see immediately what could happen next. I knew that I could always go back to consulting and go back into the corporate world, but trying to build something for myself and showcase that and give it all I had and everything I've learned from business and the creative side and just give it a shot. that's when I knew this has gotta happen.
Yeah, it's happening. It sounds to me like you were hungrier than what was on your plate at PwC.
Yeah, or I had a different appetite.
Yeah. And sometimes in the corporate world, if your appetite is stronger than what they can feed you, usually the only right answer is to leave and to go do your own thing. Some people are meant to be entrepreneurs, and I would believe that you're one of them, you know?
Thank you. I also think there's a certain like mentality, I believe, for sure. But also there's a time and place where you have this much energy, this much excitement for your passion. And my time is now. And I believe in like the universe directing me in a certain way and that energy. And I'm really channeling it. And yes, I am so excited by this content. I'm so passionate about what I'm creating and building out Kayenne and my fashion brand. So it it's real.
It is real. Talk to me about the moment that you told all your managers and friends and family that you're like, "I'm out." What was your managers and company's response? Were they
Wow.
surprised? I doubt they were
Wow.
surprised.
No, they weren't surprised, I don't think. But I also wanted to give the leaving like a chance. I wanted to actually be like, right, this is the right choice. Which you don't know until you actually go. But I wanted to get as much comfort in making that decision.
How long were you working on Cayenne before you pulled the trigger and left PwC?
This will be interesting because in consulting, there's this term called moonlighting. With your and you're working on either several projects at one time or you're working on something else and it's quote unquote frowned upon. But I have been working on Cayenne for like a long time. It was always at the top of my head, like all these things, all these ideas, and whether I put it on paper or not, it was still happening in my brain. I would write down all these creative, like all these inspirational components and whatever was interesting to me, I would just write it down. But I was taking courses at OCAD in 2019, but that was still very like, okay, I'm just going to dip my toes in, get more experience in this industry, understand the design side a bit more because I know the business side quite well. But playing it safe, as you said, like as a consultant, you want to like do your due diligence, try to understand everything before you come to this big decision, big in air quotes, and like jump in. And so that was 2019, 2020. At the beginning, I was like, okay, I'm going to take the fashion side of myself, take it more seriously, take my brand, make this real. So 2020, I started the year off. So my birthday is early in the year. And instead of having a birthday party, I decided to bring 20 women that I knew and bring them to my office on a Sunday to have a tea party to celebrate my birthday, primarily to talk about clothes.
Focus group is what we call those.
Yes, exactly. I
Happy
exactly.
birthday to Kat.
In my invitation, I sent everyone like a calendar invite. And I was like, okay, like come to a birthday party, tea party. And in the description, it's like focus group for Cayenne. And please fill out the survey, come prepared to talk about all these things. And I brought these 20 women to my office on a Sunday and I fed them like a meal for this afternoon tea party we had. And it was so, it was so, it was so
This is genius.
it's so good, because you would be the woman that I'd want to wear my clothes, and they had all of these things to share with me, and I needed them to validate, the issues that I felt existed in women's office apparel, and I wanted to test, also gather data, and that's what I did, and I mean, you could say I was working in Cayenne then, and all that was just background work.
Everyone is like, "Kat, what do you want for your birthday?" And you're like, "Validation on my business. Here is the calendar invite. You can drink tea and eat a cookie while doing that, but I need the answers."
Yeah, tell me more about your clothing and how you approach it. Like, what do you look for? What fabrics do you like?
Did
So
you
just
get
give
the
me
answers you needed that day?
add more, a whole bunch of market
Good.
research, and like,
You put 20 women in a room, you will learn a
yeah.
lot.
So I took Cayenne very seriously in 2020, and then I started working on the brand in the background. Yeah, in the summer of 2020, and then full time in the fall of 2020 after I left PwC.
I love it. So it sounds like you really worked on the brand before anything, hey?
Kind of great. I wanted to actually circle
Yeah,
back to what you were saying about
of
like
course.
how my experience was leaving.
Yes, please. I
Is
wanna hear all about the emotions, the
oh,
shame, I'm sure.
I struggled with quitting because I'm not quitting to join another organization. It wasn't like another secure job, right? Or a place where you know where you're going. So, first of all, even to like consider leaving and just banking on your own ideas and your passion and working on that, already difficult. PWC, consulting, corporate world, there's more of a linear approach and path. And you know what's next and you just have to prepare for that, make your case, and you get where you need to go. And so I was giving all of that up to try something that I have no clue what will happen. And there's beauty in it for sure. And it's exciting and thrilling, but also extremely risky versus the linear trajectory, which has very little risk in the corporate setting. And so coming to terms with, okay, I'm going to give all that up and try something for myself was really hard for me.
And it's
I,
security career path-wise, but security money-wise too. You're giving up a lot, and especially during a pandemic, people would die for your position,
I know, I
you
know.
know?
Yeah, exactly.
But it wasn't fueling you.
No, no, it just wasn't giving me what I needed. But yeah, in the middle of a pandemic, like a global pandemic too, right? So people are like questioning, what are you doing? Fashion of all things, like no one's going into the office. So
In
I get it.
corporate fashion.
I feel like I get, and I'm like, I get it. I hear you. This is just, I'm so passionate about this. I want this, and this is my element. I'm going into it. But coming to terms with that, again, my pragmatic self is like, "What are you doing?" So quitting in the middle of that was really difficult. So very emotional. I don't hold back on the emotions for sure. So lots of tears before
I think
there.
and probably, yeah, during you're handing your resignation letter, and if an employee is crying, I think that's a good sign. This place means a lot to them,
Yes,
you
and
know?
I'm passionate about my work. Telling my teammates I was leaving, it's actually quite interesting because we've been working remote since like March of 2020, and so all of this was done remotely. I think when I had shared this with the leadership that I reported to, some mix for sure. Some feedback, excited that you're leaning into your passion, love it, right? Some I think were just curious, like, why are you doing this in the middle of a pandemic? Okay, interesting. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's like my choice. But you're right. It wasn't too big of a surprise though, because my firm has this thing where we did Dundies,
Yep.
win award. And the award I won was best dressed.
I love it. You should have showed your award to that manager who called you out.
You know, that's not right. Oh, wow.
You should have went and put it on their desk.
That is very cool. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So they knew, like, the partner I reported into knew I was interested and loved fashion. And he himself had put me in touch with people in his network that were in the industry. So
Good.
I think it was a long time coming and expected. The thing with consulting is, like, if you're not coming and going in that industry, that's just what's normal.
I mean,
People
any
are
great
always,
consultant are probably gonna go off and do their own thing at least once or twice and come back. It's in their nature. You're just
yeah,
consulting on a different project now. You're
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, exactly. So you got it right. I think what I struggled most with in terms of telling people was actually telling my family that I was not going to work a corporate job and try and was my own business. Half of the fear was in terms of like choosing to leave was the firm was a very safe place. And, I worked really hard and I worked with what I wanted, but it was tricky to come to terms with the quitting because it made it really hard for me to leave because it's a big brand. There is a lot of weight to it. And in my mind, I let my work and this big company value my worth a little too much, I think, and for a little too long because it was just very safe. It's a career trajectory that you knew where you were going. It was very safe. And it kind of took away from who I was and like what I knew I was capable of because you work really hard and I let it validate me a little too much, I think. And thinking about leaving was hard because I'm leaving brand, I'm leaving stability in terms of monetary compensation, a paycheck. And I think telling my parents that and my family was actually the hardest part because I come from like a very traditional Asian household where, my parents immigrated to Canada. They worked really hard, didn't get to go to university here. And I think any immigrant parent is they don't ever wish their children ever have to go through their laborious lifestyle. And they can provide for their family so that you don't ever have to think about like, oh, well, like, what if I can't do this or that and struggle? So, I mean, so I didn't want my parents to think that I didn't have that anymore. So I actually, when I quit PWC, when I quit my job, I didn't tell my parents for 2 months.
This shocks me so much.
And I didn't bring them along. I was honestly, honest to God, like I was just scared. I was scared what they would think. I was scared they would disapprove and they would be like, no, absolutely do not try this out because we've done the entrepreneurship route. And yes, my parents are very successful and they've done really well and they're very inspiring. And
They know what it takes.
yeah, and they're like, "You are gonna work tooth and nail, you're gonna have to fight for what you need, and you have to be ready to fail and take on all this risk," right? But I did not think my parents would ever approve of that and be supportive of go and struggle, you know? I think being a parent, you don't wanna see your child struggle, like, you don't want them to
Ever.
face difficult situation or adversity. Like, my parents made everything very secure and safe, like, they made a very safe environment for me, and so even in my mind, and like bless my parents for doing that, right? I grew up doing every activity and working really, really hard. And they gave me whatever I needed so I could get to where I needed to go, right? Very safe. And that I'm an adult. So like they can't give me anything now, right?
They still
So,
wanna try though.
oh, they will. But it's hard because I'm giving up a lot to try something that might not give me anything in return. So I was so scared to tell my parents. I actually did not tell them for a good 2 months, thinking about like, how do I communicate this to them? I think deep down in my mind, I knew they would be okay with it. But I was more scared about, is this real? Am I doing this like for the right reasons? Like,
Mhm.
be
Once you tell
okay.
your parents, it's real. The
Oh,
decision
it's
is
so
in
real.
stone.
It is real, yeah. And I told close friends and everyone was very supportive, but I didn't know how to tell my parents. And then, yeah, one day I just decided like now is the time. I was looking really, I just made a lot of progress with Kayenne and I was like, okay, how do I not tell my parents? I got to the
Yeah,
point where, yeah,
because it's funny because you're still waking up and doing the same hours, if not more, so it's not
yeah,
like your schedule changed at all where they're
no,
like, "Oh, are you just hanging out on the couch now? You're not working?" You're probably working more.
exactly. So then I just, yeah, decided like now's the time I have to tell my parents. And so I called my parents and I was like, yeah, I quit my job and I'm going to work on something else. And so I actually started off lightly. I was like, I quit my job, period, like hard stop, just to see what the reaction was. And they're like, okay, this is your life. This is your path. You take whatever path that you are going on in your journey. So I honestly was just thrilled that that was the first reaction. And then I
Good
told,
start, mom and
it was like, I was like, okay, okay, feels good. Then I proceeded to tell them like I'm going to start an apparel brand. I want to go into fashion and create a line and try entrepreneurship. And the reaction I got from that was just like my parents, they are incredible. I was so warmed and basically, yeah, my parents were like, all right, like do your thing. This is your journey and your path and you are going to go through it however way you want to. You are going to. And I did not expect my parents to be so supportive at all.
how
Um,
big was your sigh of relief? You've built this up for 2 months.
oh my God, like, oh, if not longer. Yeah, because I've always wanted to go into fashion. I've always had that passion in me, but I never took it seriously. I never put it front and center because I never thought my parents would be okay with that. Because if I look back, I might have just gone to fashion school. It's something I've always wanted to do. I never thought it was a possibility because you could call it the Asian mentality where you study subjects like business, engineering, become like engineer,
You do
doctor,
practical.
yeah, you consider that route, right? Whether it was sports or it was that extracurricular. So that to me was never a real possibility, like becoming a fashion designer. I didn't know how to articulate that side of me at all to my parents, to other people. How do I show beyond the clothes that I was wearing? This is something that I really cared about and really, really liked the art and the style. I truly just want to be right now a fashion designer. And so when I was telling my parents this, my parents are like, well, yeah, my mom was a seamstress, so she understood. And I learned a lot of this stuff from her. And so naturally, this is what I want to do right now. My parents were so incredibly supportive, and I did not expect that at all. I was in tears
I was
and
gonna say wave of emotion for sure.
huge. And you're right, like a big weight off my shoulders because they were approving this basically. And I could not ask for more from my parents. And I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm happy. I don't have to like kind of hide this part of myself to anyone anymore.
Because you were
Um,
hiding for a while because, like you said, it's frowned upon at your firm to be working on to really have any other interests outside of the firm.
so and yeah, conflict of interest maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, but for my parents, like honestly, like I struggled to tell them, but it was the most rewarding conversation with them because it's a huge privilege. I get to try and play and experience, and to have my parents look at it and be excited by it, and also proud that I've tried something.
And taking it seriously, it seems.
Yeah, it's a big deal,
This is
especially
not a plaything for you, Kat. This is real.
yeah. When I told my parents, it was definitely a big sigh of relief and having them feel comfortable with this decision. Yeah, it was really, really sentimental. Yeah.
So your brand is called Kayenne. Your tagline for Kayenne is it's time to start looking at your clothes differently. What do you mean by that?
Uh, well, because a few things. Because we're working from home, I think we need to look at apparel very differently when we start going back into the office. So, number one, looking at your clothes differently stems from style, stems from feeling. How do you feel in your clothes? And because I've been working from home for like a year, you are adjusted to comfort. And there's so many layers to this. I'm so excited. You're adjusted to comfort, and that's something that should be prioritized in an office setting. When you look at business apparel and business attire, it's very formal, it's very rigid, very structured. Gosh, like I used to wear pencil skirts that would not let me walk up the stairs.
Literally, I've been there. And you're in heels you can barely walk in too.
No, exactly. And I'm rocking the heels. I am wearing a pencil skirt. I mean, I feel like I look good. Like I feel
We
like,
look like we're on the show Suits, but we definitely don't feel that way.
oh my gosh, yeah, bless my Megan Markle, how she rocks the pencil skirt. Her outfits and style is fantastic. Like that cast and their whole set and their costume, beautiful. And I'm like emulating that look. I've got the pencil skirt, got the dress shirt, like trying to look very professional. And yes, I can accomplish the look, but gosh, do I feel terrible in my clothes. I can't breathe. My
You're
pencil
sitting
skirt's
at a desk. You're like, "How do I think and, like, run an analysis right now? I can't breathe."
and then, like, if you eat anything, you're like,
Oh,
"Whoa,"
you don't
like,
eat.
and you can't eat, but it's just bloated. Your stomach shows through, and you're like, "Well, this is not the look that's not the look I was going for." And then, like I said, like, I'm wearing heels. I'm trying to walk up the stairs. I'm walking sideways up the stairs. It should not be happening. Why am I so uncomfortable? Like you said, like, I'm sitting at a desk, I just can't even start feeling comfortable to do my work because I'm just so uncomfortable in my clothes. I look good. It's okay. No, we should never compromise how you feel and forgo comfort to look a certain way. And I feel that's happened a lot for me and for a woman in the office.
Women in all offices.
Yeah, and so that's another layer to looking at your clothes differently, right? Is to feel comfortable in your clothes. And as we start looking at with going back to the office, soon hopefully apparel should feel good. I don't want anyone to ever have to walk sideways up the stairs ever again. Another component is really looking at your clothes differently in a sense where, so probably stems from sustainability at the end of the day, but your wardrobe, like your office wardrobe, shouldn't be exclusive. Like they should exist in tandem with the rest of the clothes that you need to wear for the other parts of your life, like social, whether you're going to brunch or, you're going to have coffee with a friend. going for groceries. My goal with Kayenne and for people to look at their clothes differently is what you wear to the office should be able to translate to what you wear casually and in social settings. I don't believe there should be a difference in this is my office wardrobe, and then this is my everyday wardrobe, and this is my lifestyle, casual, social wardrobe. I understand, respect, and totally appreciate when you have your very formal pieces where you wear to like, one off events like parties and weddings, etc. I think that's a different market and industry altogether. However, for apparel in itself, I think your clothes should be able to transition seamlessly from one to another, especially since as an individual, if you are working in the corporate office, you're working long hours and you're still going to be at the office, during the day and the activities that you do, you might go for lunch. So you're going to have to walk to lunch, go for a little, maybe you have a walking meeting. So you're going to go be and the mobility and the comfort should be able to still hold up. Maybe you'll go for drinks and you want to look a certain way at drinks and at happy hour, but you should also feel good. And so the clothes that Cayenne in the collection is so that you can transition seamlessly between these activities and different life activities. So that's how I want people to look at their clothes a little differently as well, is that you can wear these pieces for a variety of different events and activities. And at the end of the day, that is more sustainable because you realistically only need a few key pieces to enable you to do that. It's more sustainable for yourself, your finances, and the environment.
I love the part you talk about sustainability. I look at a piece all the time in cost per wear. If something is $20, I'm going to wear it once. That item, that wear was $20. But if I buy an item for $1,000 and wear it 100 times, it's actually cheaper than the $20 item, you know? Give us a little bit of an overview of what Cayenne is and kind of what you're building and launching this month.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Kayenne in itself is a woman's ready to wear apparel brand. And ready to wear means the pieces are like you could just buy and they're all ready to go and you just put it on. And it's going to be a collection of just variety of different pieces so that women can wear and pair together. The brand is really about just feeling good in your clothes and trying to look at clothes differently in terms of what are the materials that we're using and why we're choosing to use certain materials and where are those materials coming from. So they're back to the sustainability component and like the ethically sourced materials and just fair trade in terms of like if we're going to be buying these materials from other people overseas, are we working with partners that align with our values? The brand also exudes other characteristics around like, women in the office space just feel confident in what they're wearing so they can do their jobs and do it well. Something I've always been interested in is okay, like you dress a certain way in the office. People might look at you differently. I got judged for wearing these gray pants that apparently look like sweatpants, but no. But women have like there's a certain like business professional look. Like if you Google corporate woman, you get a woman in a pencil skirt and heels. And no, I don't think that should be the first result that comes off of Google when you Google that. Because women don't need to wear a skirt and a pair of heels to be taken seriously in the boardroom. Just wear whatever the heck you want and you should be equally as respected. And my clothes and the collection are going to enable you to feel confident and be taken seriously. And that should never cross someone's mind because those are minor things that should not take up space. So the brand, I want to use that to communicate a variety of different components from sustainability to just thoughtful consumption, but also comfort and confidence in the office.
Talk to me about some of the challenges and some of the hardest parts of building Cayenne so far. Anything surprising or super challenging?
Today, I actually spent some time with my mom, and we just discussed a little bit more about starting a company. Yeah, my mom is retired, but she worked in fashion. So she was just chatting to me about like finances and what can happen and like how do you take on risk.
What are the big decisions? Can you share any?
Absolutely. It's finalizing the deal with manufacturing. So going into production, deciding on the next pieces that will be put into production. So the collection is fully designed. It's more so like, how do we bring it to life? And bringing it to life has so many different moving components and pieces that go into it that take a very long time. So you really are working like 6 months out. So deciding each product has its own strategy, like how do I bring that to market? What does that look like?
You probably feel like you're running 5 different products.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And each product is different, right? And then within that product is also can have its own family. So you can make it as complex as you want, but some of the big decisions include, yeah, signing the deal to make go into production, figuring out like what is the next step for the other parts of the collection, and then a lot of marketing, a whole bunch of marketing.
It's all marketing, and marketing can be as easy as you wanna make it or as complicated as you wanna make it. At the end of the day, marketing is what do people think of your brand,
Yeah,
and does anyone know about it, and how are they finding out? That is marketing. But
exactly.
sometimes new entrepreneurs and even people just launching products overcomplicate marketing so much, and it seems so daunting sometimes, but it's as simple as that.
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge is probably by nature of myself and my overachiever mindset, perhaps. But there's so much I want to do, and there's so many things that I want to just complete. But this is a huge undertaking for myself. So I have all these dreams and ideas and goals. They're big, but to get there, there's a lot of small steps you have to take. And so one of the biggest challenges for me is I can't conquer the world at once. I can't do everything
And
all
you
at
definitely
once.
can't do it by yourself.
No, and being able to recognize my shortcomings or areas I need help and asking for help has been something I've been working on. And so I just surrounded myself with talented individuals and seeking out individuals that will help me with the brand from their specialties. And I'm now looking for consultants to advise me in areas that I need help on, but also just my blind. But it's also being able to just take one step at a time instead of trying to chew the entire thing and doing everything at one time and expecting things to be completed like quickly. Everything takes very, very long. And so I have all these like great ideas and exciting things that I think are really exciting. But it's really taking one step at a time and just not overwhelming myself because it can be so overwhelming. I'm wearing
So
all these
overwhelming.
hats. I'm wearing all the hats. I'm doing the designing. I'm doing the business side. And I want to control all of that, but you can't. Like, you literally are limited by time and your energy. And there are areas that are going to pay off way more if you just spend your time and energy towards versus other areas. And it's being more cognizant and conscious about what areas I should spend time on. And also just being realistic with the timeline has been a big adjustment that I've learned now as an entrepreneur.
How do you know which to prioritize? As an entrepreneur building a brand, like you said, you already see what Cayenne's gonna be 5, 10 years from now, but how do you know what to do today, this hour?
Half of it is gut, honestly. Half of it is like my
Good.
gut is telling me these are the things I need to do. Obviously, there's like milestones I've set and I'm going to work backwards,
Of course.
but like just an intuition, an instinct. And I'm like, okay, I want to do this now. And obviously I have to like think about it and process it and see if it makes sense. But it's gut and like business sense. For example, the day I had that soft launch for the website, like that that was very interesting and very fun. But yeah, it was in my gut and I was like, it needs to go out and it's going to happen. And this is the date for it. Did not expect because it went out last December 18, 2020. And December 18 was like a Friday. That was before a lot of the offices closed for the 2 weeks of holiday. Did not even know. I've lost sense of time
Of
because I'm
course.
heads down working hard. And so like launching that soft launch for the website was just in my gut, like, this is gonna happen on this day. But lucky enough, it just happened to be like a very like exciting Friday before the holidays. Didn't even know. But I remember telling you behind the scenes, like things hit the fan, like things were not working. I was struggling. Oh my God, things never go as planned, right? Like I have that milestone. More, there's a lot of little steps that get me there, and knowing how long each thing takes and the effort that's required, like to get you there, is really important. So that's how I would prioritize. But that launch in itself, or that soft launch, I just want to be soft launch forever.
Right?
Messy is not the right word for it because it was messy. It was just very funny because, like I said, nothing goes as planned because you could plan and you can calculate all the risks and you can, list all the things that you're going to do as your contingency or backup. But it isn't until you do it that like, oh, like that went wrong. This was an issue, or like, oh, that did not work. And I mean, there's funny stories I can tell about that day, but
Please. I mean, Kat, you don't know what you don't know. So tell me some things that you didn't realize, maybe about the manufacturing process, maybe about what happened during your soft launch, anything. Like, is there anything that so surprised you? You're like, I could not have planned for this.
the one that comes top of mind is the soft launch day. I was like, okay, I need to probably update my professional profile on LinkedIn. But go to LinkedIn, and Kayenne has its own page, which you can follow. And I operate that page because I've created it. I'm literally the founder of this brand, and I'm incorporated as, this is my brand. This is real. So I go into LinkedIn and I decide to change my title and my experience. But LinkedIn just decided not to let me do that. No matter, so you have to like put in, what your job title is. So I write founder, and then you type in the organization. And so I start typing in Kayenne because it's a drop down. Basically, it shows you the results that are in the LinkedIn database. Kayenne did not exist apparently, and I could not, for the life of me, share that I worked at my own company for the profile company that I had made the profile for. And it was very frustrating and irritating for sure, but it's such a minor thing that I was like, this isn't worth me like getting upset about. But it was
But
like
it's also so
so,
minor that makes it more
yeah.
irritating. You're like, this is the thing that's gonna stop this launch right now.
No, I was like, oh my God, it's not that big of a deal. But I was like, so irritated by it. I had my creative go in and try to be me and do it on his computer. Nope, did not work. However, if he himself tagged his experiences to Kayenne, it worked for him. So I was just shocked. I was like, okay, clearly LinkedIn does not want me to work in my own company that I know. I mean, like
LinkedIn
LinkedIn's like,
wants you to be a mystery so far.
no, and it was just funny. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna ride this wave. Like, can't take that too seriously, right? Can't conquer the world. There's bigger battles to fight here. I mean, Kaya's live. I'm sure people will gravitate to platform to understand like what I'm doing, what's happening. People will go onto LinkedIn because they're curious and they want to see what I'm up to. I'm sure. Appreciate it. Fully love that. I was like, I'll just use it as a sense of mystery. Like I will announce on LinkedIn in a different way. And actually,
Use
yeah,
it to your advantage.
and I did, and it was fun. And I instead published an article on LinkedIn and used that in a way to articulate what I was doing. And that was just like a small minor hiccup about the software.
Too funny, too funny. What else has been crazy surprising or challenging?
Oh wow! So the fashion apparel industry is a very, very complex value chain. So when you look at how something is just on the shelf, when you go to a clothing store, you just see it and you're like, oh, I like this. You look at the price tag, you touch it, and you're like, oh, like it, try it on, feels great, looks great, you buy it, right? But the back side of that is just so, so complex. Like to get that white t-shirt to the shelf has so many different parts. And one thing that I knew this was going to be tough, and I had an idea of like how much work this was going to take and timing. But wow, it's not until I really like got into it that I was like surprised and just shocked by it. And let me tell you, it's just getting a sample. So designing, no problem. Draw, play, exciting, create. Okay. And you're like, okay, let's make that into something real. And so you can find your fabrics, you can look for the right material to create that. That is in itself also quite challenging because I have set just very high standards and expectations for the fabrics that we are using for Kayenne products. So sourcing material actually is a big challenge, especially in the middle of a pandemic and not being able to see people quite regularly or touch and feel things. And it's just the barriers there. But also, Canada in itself, we don't have a lot of mills. We don't create things here and produce locally in terms of raw materials and fabric and textiles. So that is a little difficult, but nothing I cannot overcome. But it's like the process that I found really interesting so far is you have a design, you get the materials to do that, and you bring that all together and you then create a sample. So the sample basically is just the first prototype of your, let's say, your dress. And the samples, they're, I mean, you try your best. You're going to try your best to like make it come out the way you had designed it and envisioned it as a designer. But the sample just never comes out the way you think it's going to be. Again, like you just cannot anticipate until it happens. So basically, it's the sample making that is just a very timely activity, but also high in cost. Because, okay, say the first sample doesn't come out the way you like it, you gotta make another one because like you have adjustments you need to make. You have to tailor it differently, and then you make another sample. But that is a very timely and costly activity. Not to mention how much waste it creates. And this value chain in fashion and apparel is just so old school. And there's so many things that need to change. People just need to become a bit more aware of too, because that t-shirt or this dress that I have a sample of, it's going to take a long time for it to get onto the shelf for a customer to buy. And that customer, you just see it and you're like, I like it. But I cannot wait. And I'm so excited and hope that as a customer, through Kayenne, we can educate the customer that, yeah, it's on the shelf, but it took a lot of work to get there.
It sounds like you're eager to educate customers on everything you've learned so far.
Yes, yes, you're so right. Like, I think bringing people along is really important. And that's a part of the Kayenne brand is the transparency also in terms of why I'm doing this and just bring people along. I think it's exciting. I think it's exciting content. So Kayenne is looking at how do I articulate what's going on in the fashion and apparel industry and why fashion and apparel is one of the biggest generators of waste and emissions that are problematic. So there's a lot to education because that makes me sound like I'm like an expert in the space, which I'm also still learning. But it's like being able to share that and bring people along and being able to just be honest about the whole process. I think that's the brand of Cayenne too.
And it's cool if you share as you learn too. You don't need to be an expert in something to teach some. You can teach it or share it as you learn it, you know? And it makes
Yeah.
the consumer feel like they're really along for the ride. I love everything you're doing. I'm super excited. When is the launch?
So when we say launch, we're having a pre-sale
Right.
for select items in the first collection.
Mm.
And oh, I'm so jazzed and so excited by the products. I think I hope people love them. I love them. But yeah, it's a pre-sale and then the full collection will be later 2021.
I'm super excited. Kat, one of the last questions I have for you. What do you wish you knew before you jumped into entrepreneurship?
Wow. That's a really good question. What I wish I'd known before going into entrepreneurship. That's tough for me to answer because I care. I don't think I'm ready to answer that just because I haven't made a sale. I would say like I'm like a half baked. But if I were to tell myself something, telling myself that you just have to do it. You will go through so many interesting experiences because you're going to, right? So if you choose to be an entrepreneur, you just choose to try it. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. But if you are able to be open minded about each and every single experience and open yourself up to those experiences, because now having done Cayenne and been working on this brand for a while, is I've opened myself to all these new opportunities, experiences, and thoughts that I had never, ever thought about and never would have encountered without doing it. And so, what I wish I'd known before I started pursuing Cayenne is just there's a lot of beauty and as much as it is scary, it is so worth it. It is so worth it because everything that I've learned so far, all the challenges and all the ups and downs and all the late nights, it is so worth it because A, it's your own. But B is it just every experience just makes you who you are. These experiences, I never thought I would have experienced. And I don't think I would have if I had continued working in my job.
What scares you the most as it grows?
Oh man. What scares me the most is like myself. I want to do so many things, Janelle. There's so many things that are exciting in the world. I think the world is big and I want to live a big life and have passions and interests in a large facet of different areas. And so what scares me is like I bite off more than I can chew. But to that point is exciting because like, okay, how do I manage it? But also, all right, like how do I incorporate that into what I'm doing and normalize like the fact that there's a lot going on?
It sounds like you're almost scared. Do I have enough resources and time to get it all done?
Yes,
Mm,
absolutely.
that is
Absolutely.
scary.
Yeah. Get it all done. But then again, it's just like being honest with myself with like how do I spend time because it can be very overwhelming and it is easy to get caught up with the fact that, oh, am I not doing enough? Oh, this did not meet the timeline. But again, it's like, okay, you can let it get to you and it's scary and you can feel like the world is ending because you couldn't get it done. But there's no point in living in that challenging state that you create for yourself. And as an entrepreneur, you just have to temper those emotions. And I'm learning how do I do that and how do I keep a level headed mind space. It's hard because you're just like going in every single direction at like 1,000 miles per hour. But it comes back to the point we were talking about before. It could be a challenge, but you could just look at it in a different way.
An opportunity.
Yeah.
As we're getting closer to your pre-launch and then eventual launch, for everyone listening, how can they support you?
Wow. Would love the listeners to follow along on Instagram. We're going to be showcasing a variety of different behind the scenes, but also the products on Instagram. So you can follow Wear Kayenne on Instagram and then subscribe to our email list. And the email will give you more behind the scenes, but also keep you up to date in terms of when the exact date of the pre-sale is. And we have a page on the site where it's help us create for you. And always interested in learning what are some of the clothing challenges people have and why, so that we can just create better products and better apparel moving forward. So fast fashion is so gone. Like we want to make quality products with quality materials so that they last a long time and for many different occasions, right? So those are the ways that would be really supportive for Cayenne.
Awesome. And thinking back to your experience in the past year and everything that we talked about today, any final last words or words of advice for everyone?
Oh, yeah, 2020 was a curveball. I think 2020 just made us more conscious of like who is in our bubble, who are my connections, what am I passionate about? Because 2020 limited what you could do per se. So you really had to get to know yourself a little bit better. That is beautiful because you can use that to live the life that you want, right? It's compelling in the sense that you can tell your own story to yourself because you spent a lot more time by yourself because of social distancing and working remotely. So you didn't really have to be at certain settings and expected to be places. So I think it's the fact that we're recognizing and realizing you don't need a whole lot to do what you need to do. I really want to work in fashion. I really want to work and create clothing brand and bring all my ideas and my experiences in business and life together and use that to create my fashion brand. I think the advice I would give is think about all the things that you are excited by and just go with it.
That's the perfect way to end off here, and especially we're in a new year. We came off a really eye-opening, tough, and rewarding year in a lot of different ways and a lot of different experiences for everyone. But Yeah, we got to take every chance we can get. And the only time we have is now, and to really just go after what we want in every possible aspect of our life. So, Kat, I just want to thank you so much for being here. It's been so nice to reconnect, and your story is going to resonate with a lot of people. I'm so excited for what you're going to create.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me.
Of course, of course. Keep me updated on how the launch goes. I'm sure I will be sporting your stuff eventually. Let me into the pre launch, please.
You got it. You got it.